Hi, glad to see you on my channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. It's important to me. Have a good view. On April 9, 2021, Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh, husband of British Queen Elizabeth II, died at the age of 99. In addition to his venerable age and high status, the deceased was known for an eventful life, an important place in which the Second World War took an important place. In this article, we will briefly talk about Prince Philip's military biography and related historical events. An uneasy childhood, Prince Philip, who was born on June 10, 1921, on the island of Corfu, came from the Danish and Greek royal family of Glucksburg. His father, Prince Andrew of Greece and Denmark, 1882-1944, was the son of King George Warren of Greece, who reigned from 1863-1913, and grandson of King Christian IX of Denmark, reigned from 1863-1906. Andrew's brother Constantine I was on the Greek throne from 1913 to 1917 and from 1920 to 1922. Philip's mother, Princess Alice Battenberg, 1885-1969, was the great-granddaughter of British Queen Victoria and niece of Russian Empress Alexandra Feodorovna. Philip was the couple's fifth child and only son. At the time of his son's birth, Prince Andrew was at the front of the Greco-Turkish War, where he commanded the 2nd Army Corps of the active army. In August-September 1921, the Corps participated in the offensive on Ankara, where it met Mustafa Kemal's troops in the Battle of Sakarya. According to conventional wisdom, Andrew proved himself an incapable commander, and his incompetence contributed to the failure of the Greek offensive. As a consequence, the prince was removed from command and transferred to the rear. In August 1922, the Greek army in Turkey was completely defeated by Kemal in a brilliantly and swiftly conducted general offensive. The consequence of the military disaster was the mutiny of the Greek military on September 11, 1922. In fact, there was a military putsch, and the generals who seized power declared King Constantine I deposed in favor of his son George II. In search of those responsible for the defeat, the putschists organized an extraordinary tribunal that sentenced a number of former ministers and military commanders to death. Against the background of 5 executed, Prince Andrew got off with a slight fright. He was sentenced to exile from the country together with his family. Prince Andrew and his family left Greece aboard the British light cruiser Calypso. The exiles settled in Paris, where by the late 1920s the family had effectively disintegrated. Andrew cohabited with mistresses and spent time in Monte Carlo. His wife since 1930 was in various sanatoriums because of mental illness. She was suspected schizophrenia, and the daughters married German aristocrats. The beginning of his military career, Philip moved to the United Kingdom in 1930, where he lived in the care of relatives on his mother's side of the Mountbatten family. This is how the British Battenbergs anglicized their surname in 1917. In 1933-1935, he studied in Germany and then transferred to the Scottish school Gordonstoun, from which he graduated. In May 1939, Philip became a cadet at the Royal Naval College, Dartmouth. In July of the same year, he met 13-year-old British Princess Elizabeth, accompanying the girl during her visit to the college. Between the young people began a correspondence, which later developed into a love affair. The Second World War began, in which Philip found himself on opposite sides of the front with his many German relatives, and not only in a symbolic sense. For example, the husband of one of his older sisters, Cecilia Christoph of Hesse, held the rank of SS Oberfuhrer, and during the war years, he served in the Luftwaffe. He died in a plane crash in 1943. Philip, who had a reputation as an excellent cadet, had already left the Naval War College in January 1940 at the lowest officer rank of midshipman. His first duty station was the battleship Ramillies type Revenge, on which Philip spent 4 months. The young officer's baptism of fire was the escort in the Indian Ocean convoys US-1 and US-2, with troops traveling from Australia to the Middle East. The battleship had no contact with the enemy, and in May 1940 headed for the Mediterranean Sea. Philip remained on duty in Ceylon. Since January 1941, the prince served on the battleship Valiant type Queen Elizabeth, which was part of the Mediterranean fleet. He was promoted to the rank of sub-lieutenant and was successful in active combat, especially distinguished in the naval battle of Cape Matapan on March 27-29, 1941. It is known that Philip was an operator of the battleship's searchlights and thus directly participated in the destruction of 3 Italian heavy cruisers in the night battle. Let's clarify the context of events. On the morning of March 28th, south of Crete began a battle of powerful compounds of the Royal Italian Navy and the British Mediterranean Fleet. British torpedo carrier planes from the heavy aircraft carrier Formidable were able to damage the Italian battleship Vittorio Veneto and the heavy cruiser Pola. The battleship managed to get away, but the cruiser lost the move. To help him, Italian Admiral Angelo Iachino sent sister ships Zara and Fiume, accompanied by 4 destroyers. British Commander Admiral Andrew Cunningham threw to intercept the cruisers his battleships Barham, Valiant, and Warspite with an escort. The radars of the British ships detected the enemy around 22:00. The Italians had no radars. In the darkness, the battleships were able to get close to the enemy and at 22:30 opened fire almost at point-blank range. The British quickly shot the stationary cruiser Pola and the nearby Fiume and Zara. It was on them fired battleship Valiant, searchlights which controlled Prince Philip. On Fiume were given 1 salvo of main caliber, 4 shells, and 7 auxiliary, 70 shells. On Zara, 5 salvos of main caliber, 35 shells, and 5 auxiliary, 50 shells. The battleship ceased firing at 22:35, after which British destroyers finished off 3 cruisers and 2 damaged destroyers. For his actions in the battle off Cape Matapan, Philippe received an official commendation from his command. In April-May 1941, the battleship Valiant operated off the coast of Greece and participated in the defense of Crete, for which the Prince in 1946 was awarded the Greek Award for Heroism in Wartime, Military Cross. First Mate. After the fighting in the Mediterranean, the Prince returned to Britain, where he continued his studies. In July 1942, he was promoted to lieutenant, and in October he became first assistant commander of the destroyer Wallace, an old Shakespeare-type ship. Until May 1943, the destroyer participated in the anti-submarine defense of the east coast of Great Britain. Contacts with the enemy in the history of the ship is not recorded. At the end of June 1943, Wallace relocated to Gibraltar, and from July 7th to July 10th, 1943, provided the landing of Allied troops in Sicily. The destroyer accompanied convoy KMF-18, which transported units of the 1st Canadian Infantry Division from the harbor of Beaune, Algeria, to the sector near the town of Pachino. Immediately on the day of the landing on July 10th, Wallace provided air defense for his sector. In September 1943, the destroyer Wallace returned to Britain and continued her eventful service on the East Coast. The following February, Philip was commissioned as First Assistant Commanding Officer of the newest Whelp-type W destroyer. The ship entered service in April 1944, her first operation being a trip to Svalbard in June to supply the garrison there. On August 2nd, Whelp left Portsmouth and headed for duty in the Indian Ocean as part of the 27th Destroyer Flotilla. On October 15th, the ship arrived in Trincomalee and joined the Eastern Fleet. Already on October 17th, the destroyer took part in Operation Millet, a strike on the Nicobar Islands. That day, deck planes, heavy aircraft carriers Indomitable and Victorious attacked the Nankari Islands, sinking a small Japanese transport in the harbor. Then the line cruiser Renown, heavy cruisers London, Suffolk, and Cumberland bombarded the island of Car Nicobar. On October 19th, 12th Japanese Kai-43 fighters tried to break through to the British ships, but 6 of them were shot down by an air patrol, and the rest fled. The British lost 3 fighters. The ships were not damaged. In December 1944, USS Whelp joined the British Pacific Fleet, but temporarily continued to operate in the Indian Ocean. From December 17th to December 22nd, the ship escorted the Navy tanker Wave Prince, providing aircraft carrier operations during Operation Robson, bombing of oil fields on the island of Sumatra. On January 4th, 1945, Welp directly escorted the heavy carriers Indomitable, Victorious, and Indefatigable, whose planes bombed the Pangkalan-Brandon oil field in northern Sumatra, Operation Lentil. The destroyer then encountered the submarine Shakespeare, damaged by a Japanese U-boat hunter on the high seas, and brought her in tow to Trincomalee on January 8th. Prince Philip had the opportunity to take part, albeit not the most active, in the largest aircraft carrier raid of the British Navy during the Second World War. January 24th and 29, aircraft from the heavy carriers Indomitable, Victorious, Illustrious, and Indefatigable made two powerful strikes on oil refineries in the city of Palembang on the island of Sumatra, Operations Meridian I and Meridian II. On January 29th, the Japanese tried to retaliate. 7 Ki-21 twin-engine bombers approached the Pacific Fleet ships. 6 aircraft were shot down by patrol fighters. 1 machine was destroyed by fire from the battleship King George V. No hits were achieved by the suicide bombers, but the aircraft carrier Illustrious suffered friendly fire. It was hit by 2 133mm shells, probably from the light cruiser Euryalus. On the same day, Prince Philip took part in the rescue of the crew of the TBF Avenger, a torpedo carrier that had gone down. On February 10th, Welp arrived in Sydney, from where she moved to the forward base of the British Pacific Fleet on Manus Island. From March 26 to April 17th, the destroyer participated in a British carrier group operation against airfields in the Sakishima-Gunto Islands, Operation Iceberg. The ships were subjected to kamikaze attacks, with the aircraft carriers Illustrious and Formidable sustaining damage. Philip's ship was not damaged, but needed repairs and went to Australia. Welp was later awarded the Combat Distinction, Collective Award for Participation in an Operation or Campaign, Okinawa 1945. The destroyer was repaired at Melbourne until July, after which she moved to Manus Island. On August 9th, Welp entered the island of Guam in the escort of the battleship Duke of York, on board of which was the commander of the British Pacific Fleet, Admiral Bruce Fraser. The naval commander arrived to meet with his American counterpart, Admiral Chester Nimitz, for talks and the presentation of Britain's highest honor, the Order of the Garter. During the visit, received information about the Japanese government's agreement to surrender, and on August 16th, Welp urgently headed for the shores of Japan. On September 2, 1945, Prince Philip was aboard his ship in Tokyo Bay during the surrender ceremony of the Japanese Empire. The destroyer Welp then proceeded to Hong Kong, where the formal surrender of the Japanese garrison took place on September 16th. This was the end of Philip's participation in World War II. For his wartime service, he was awarded a number of British medals: the 1939-1945 Star, the African Star, the Atlantic Star, the Italian Star, the Burma Star, and the 1939-1945 Military Medal. He also received the Greek Military Cross and the French War Cross, 1939-1945. The prince is known to have valued his battle honors very highly, although he was later honored with many much more prestigious decorations. Prince Consort. In January 1946, Philip returned to the UK on his ship. He became an instructor at the School of Petty Officers, Royal Arthur, and in the summer of the same year asked King George VI of Great Britain for the hand of his daughter Elizabeth, relations with whom he maintained by correspondence during the war years. The monarch gave his consent, but Philip had to be baptized in Anglicanism, formally renounce the rights to the Greek and Danish thrones, and take the British family name Mountbatten. After the wedding on November 20th, 1947, Philip took the title of Duke of Edinburgh, became a Knight of the Order of the Garter, and one of the personal aides to the king. At the same time, the husband of the future queen continued to serve in the Royal Navy. He did staff work in the Admiralty, and in 1948 graduated from the Royal Naval Staff College in Greenwich. In 1949, Philip Mountbatten served in Malta as First Assistant Commanding Officer of the Type C destroyer Checkers, the flagship of the first flotilla of destroyers in the Mediterranean Fleet. In July 1950, the Duke of Edinburgh was promoted to Lieutenant Commander and became commander of the Magpie frigate Black Swan, part of the Mediterranean Fleet. Command of the first and last ship of Philippe's career did not last long. In July 1951, he effectively ended his naval service. In 1951, Philip concentrated on his new duties, becoming a member of the British Privy Council and making his first official visit to Canada and the United States with his wife. On February 6, 1952, he officially became Prince Consort to the reigning queen, and in July of the same year was promoted to the military rank of commander, the last rank to which he was entitled by virtue of his military service. The Duke of Edinburgh subsequently held the highest ceremonial ranks and titles of Great Britain, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. Formally, he was Admiral of the navies of all these countries. In 2011, Elizabeth II bestowed on her husband the unique title of Lord High Admiral. Thank you for watching the video to the end. Forget to put a like and subscribe to the channel. It's important to me. See you soon.